Hello, and welcome back to Storycrafts Kids. Today, we leave the realm of speed and enter a world of whispers and shadows for a timeless tale about brilliant ideas and the courage it takes to act on them. In the vast, echoing pantry of old Willowbrook Manor lived a large community of resourceful little field mice. They were a cheerful, diligent group, always working together to nibble on crumbs, store seeds, and avoid the countless dangers of the human world. Their biggest danger, however, did not come from boots or brooms. It came from a silent, sleek, and terrifying hunter. This hunter was known only as Shadowpaw, the manor cat. Shadowpaw was a creature of myth and terror, famous for his uncanny stealth. He moved like a liquid shadow, his footsteps completely silent, his eyes gleaming yellow in the dark corners of the storeroom. Shadowpaw never announced his arrival, he simply was there, turning a quiet foraging trip into a desperate scramble for life. The mice lived in perpetual, gnawing fear. Their food runs were short, the rest was disturbed, and their community dwindled day by day. They could never predict where or when Shadowpaw would strike next, making every single journey out of their nest a matter of life and death. The risk was too high, the fear was too great, and the terror of the silent hunter began to break their spirits. Finally, Elder Thistle, the wisest and oldest mouse in the colony, called a grand assembly to address the ongoing crisis. The assembly was held in a secure, hidden alcove behind a loose wainscoting board, where the scent of the cat was muffled by old wood. Hundreds of tiny, anxious faces huddled together, their ears twitching nervously at every creak and distant sound. Elder Thistle stood on a discarded thimble, his whiskers trembling slightly with the weight of his concern for his people. "Friends, neighbors, brave foragers," he began, his voice a frail squeak that carried surprising authority. "We cannot continue like this. Shadowpaw's reign of terror must end. We must find a way to anticipate his lethal visits." A desperate wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many mice shook their heads, believing no defense against the swift cat was possible. Then a young mouse named Pipkin, known for his cleverness and bold ideas, squeezed his way to the front. Pipkin held up a tiny, glittering object he had salvaged from the floor of the sitting room, a small, shiny brass bell. "Elder Thistle, friends," Pipkin squeaked excitedly, holding the bell aloft for all to see. "I have the solution. A perfect, flawless plan." The crowd hushed, eager to hear any shred of hope that might lighten the dark cloud hanging over their lives. "The cat, Shadowpaw, is silent," Pipkin declared. "That is his power. But what if we took that silence away?" He explained his idea. They would somehow, using string or a fine chain, attach this small bell to Shadowpaw's neck. "Think of it," Pipkin exclaimed, his voice rising in excitement. "Every time Shadowpaw moves, the bell will jingle. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. We will always have a warning. We will know exactly where he is and have time to flee to safety." For a moment, there was a profound silence, followed by an explosive burst of cheers and joyous squeaks. The mice jumped, hugged, and patted Pipkin on the back. The assembly instantly turned into a celebration of brilliant thinking. "A masterpiece," squeaked Dusty, a nervous mouse who had suffered 3 near misses already. "Simple, elegant, and effective." They envisioned their future: long, leisurely trips to the grain sack, peaceful naps without fear, and a life truly lived out of the shadow. The bell, small and glittering in the faint light, became the symbol of their salvation, a promise of peace. The mice began to discuss the mechanics: how they would tie the knots, how far the string should hang, and where they would hide the bell until the moment was right. The plan was truly perfect. It didn't require fighting the cat. It only required hearing the cat. It was pure genius. Pipkin stood tall, basking in the glory of his revolutionary concept. He was the hero who had saved them all with a simple, inexpensive piece of brass. The celebration continued for nearly an hour, a joyous sound of hope that had been absent from the pantry for far too long. The risk of the cat was, in their minds, neutralized by the elegance of the plan. They had conquered fear through intelligence. Everyone felt safe just thinking about the bell, even though it was still sitting harmlessly on the thimble. They pictured Shadowpaw stalking silently, only to be betrayed by his own tiny jingle, allowing the mice to scatter and survive. It was the ultimate reversal of fortunes, a grand victory for the weak against the strong, won by wit alone. The air was thick with optimism, the scent of fear replaced by the pleasant expectation of safety and freedom. Elder Thistle waited patiently, letting the wave of euphoria wash over the assembly before gently tapping the thimble with his tail. The crowd quieted down, ready for Elder Thistle to conclude the meeting and declare the plan official. Elder Thistle held the small bell in his trembling paws, turning the bright brass over slowly, reflecting the light. "Indeed, Pipkin," the elder said calmly, "your plan is a stroke of genius. It is faultless in its design and magnificent in its effect. If we can achieve this," he continued, "we will have peace. Our days of terror will be over, and we will thrive once more." He then paused, his ancient eye sweeping over the faces of the celebrating mice, his expression growing solemn. But my friends, Elder Thistle asked, the simple question dropping into the room like a heavy stone, who among you will bell the cat? The cheers died in their throats. The joyful sounds instantly vanished, replaced by a silence more profound and deep than before. The hundreds of mice who had just been celebrating began to shuffle their feet nervously, avoiding eye contact with the elder. The bell plan was perfect, but the action required to execute it was terrifying, risky, and perhaps impossible. To bell the cat, one mouse would have to approach Shadowpaw when he was asleep or distracted. That mouse would have to creep close enough to slip a loop around the cat's powerful, muscular neck. This mouse would be inches away from those deadly, lightning-fast claws, and even closer to those snapping jaws. The entire process would take several agonizing seconds in which the cat could wake up, strike, and end the mission instantly. The theoretical perfection of the plan was suddenly confronted by the cold, hard reality of the terrifying risk. The glorious idea had an ugly cost, the life of the volunteer. I can't, squeaked Pipkin, the inventor of the plan, quickly retreating behind a large, fluffy sister. I am the thinker. I am not suited for the field mission. Dusty, the mouse who had praised the plan so highly, gulped and tried to make himself invisible against the wall. I am too slow, whispered one mouse, though he was quite fast. The cat will catch me before I get even halfway. My eyesight is poor, said another mouse who had the sharpest eyes in the colony. I might put the bell on a table leg by mistake. Excuses were offered and instantly accepted by the others, who were equally terrified and relieved not to be the ones speaking. They suddenly realized the difference between simply talking about a solution and taking the necessary action to achieve it. The enthusiasm of the collective had evaporated into the individual fear of an impossible task. Elder Thistle waited, allowing the tension to mount, watching as the fear in their eyes grew deeper and heavier. The bell lay on the thimble, glittering brightly, the symbol of perfect, yet unachievable safety. So, we have a magnificent key, Elder Thistle observed, his voice now tinged with sadness. But not one of us is willing to put it into the lock. He reminded them that the bell plan only worked if the cat was actually wearing the bell. A great idea is a wonderful thing, but it remains merely a whisper until someone is brave enough to make it a reality. The silence was the answer. No one moved. No one spoke. The risk was simply too high for anyone to take. They knew that one wrong move, one moment of bad luck, would cost the brave mouse everything. The fear of Shadowpaw's reaction, the sheer danger of approaching the sleeping predator, was too much to overcome. Elder Thistle picked up the bell one last time and placed it back on the thimble, letting it stand as a silent testament. Friends, he sighed, the tremor back in his voice, we have learned a crucial lesson today, a lesson many in the world forget. The most difficult and important step in any plan is not the thinking, but the doing. It is easy to wish for safety, easy to cheer for an idea, and easy to offer suggestions from the safety of the crowd. But the world is changed not by those who have great plans, but by those who are willing to face the risk and take the action. He looked pointedly at Pipkin, and then at Dusty. The glory of the idea is overshadowed by the terror of the task. A plan that requires too great a risk for anyone to take is no plan at all, Elder Thistle concluded sadly. The assembly slowly began to break apart, the mice filing silently back towards their homes, their hopes shattered by their own lack of courage. They still had the bell, and they still had the genius idea. But they remained trapped by the terror of Shadowpaw. The threat remained because the courage to act, to overcome the immense risk of the mission, was missing. The bell lay unused in the alcove, a constant reminder of the safety they could have had, if only one of them had stepped forward. Shadowpaw continued his silent, terrible patrols through the Willowbrook pantry, just as invisible and dangerous as ever. The mice went back to their short, desperate foraging trips, always listening, always fearing the sound that never came. They survived, but they never truly lived free, all because they could not translate their brilliant thought into brave action. The fable of the mice reminds us that good intentions and clever ideas are only the beginning of any true accomplishment. The final, most powerful step is always the step of courage, the willingness to risk something for the greater good. Great ideas are common, but the will to execute them, especially when risk is involved, is truly rare. So, the next time you face a challenge, remember the mice of Willowbrook Manor. Don't just admire the plan, ask yourself, am I willing to be the one to do it? Because without action, even the most perfect plan, like the tiny bell, is nothing more than a useless trinket. It is the bravery in the doing, not the cleverness in the thinking, that ultimately defines success. We hope this classic fable inspires you to take action on your best ideas, no matter how scary the first step may seem. Remember that taking a risk is the only way to move from wishing to achieving. Be the hero who is willing to bell the cat in your own life. It's important to think clearly, but it's even more important to act bravely. Thank you for joining us for this tale of risk and action. Please comment below with your thoughts on how difficult it is to take that first step. Like, share, and subscribe to Storycrafts Kids for more classic fables and inspiring stories.